Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. We are positively doing the ho-ho-ho holiday special here with our friends at DeHarka. My wife's been reading the ads. This is the Mint Flicks and Chills that I'm holding up on the camera. That's Chris Pike's favorite around here. A big shout-out to Chris, who's going to be joining us here before the Steelers matchup. Please order the ice cream. We'll be talking about it during the game. If they play the game, who knows? They play the Cowboys in 5 minutes as well. The code is Baltimore Positive to get the $15.70 discount, so make sure you're doing that. Luke, when I last left you, you and I were sort of going nose to nose in some sort of, shoot interview on how we feel about the aftermath of the Broncos game. I'll just wind you up with this. During our break, and, I went out and refilled my my Royal Farms coffee. I actually added some eggnog ice cream from DeHarka in here, so I got to find something to do with all that this holiday season when I can't leave the house. I'm thinking to myself, and I mentioned about the Broncos and their leadership and their ownership. I'm wondering how the Rooneys and the Bisciottis sit and sanction this on Tuesday night and watch it if it indeed plays out like a team that hasn't practiced or doesn't know each other, and players playing in positions that they've literally lined up in scout team. We don't know their names, and the announcers don't know their names, on and on and on and on and on. That what we get is a really poor fourth preseason game that's lopsided because it's intended to be, because the other team's really trying to kill the other team and they're undefeated, and it's a rivalry. It's all it's just, I just think this isn't going to sit well in Steve Bisciotti's belly on Tuesday night. That's my belief for what I mentioned previous, which is sort of the good of the game, the Bowie Kuhn rule, right? For the integrity of the game and all that's been missing for 3 or 4 decades, right?
Yeah, I mean, and this is, and look, we kind of went a little pro wrestling going at each other, and look, it's football.
I went out
anyway.
and had coffee. My wife's on the treadmill. I'm like, Luke and I are pissed. Like, we really disagree on this, because I feel like we really disagree. I feel ownership in what I do with NST and Baltimore Positive. There's been days, and I will admit it, we have been below the bar, when things aren't as good as I want them to be. They always embarrass me to this day. I'm 52 and I care a lot. What I saw out there on Sunday embarrassed me on behalf of all of it. Just to say, no, you shouldn't do this. This isn't – I was here for the replacement games back in the 80s. You shouldn't do this. It's not good.
Fair enough. And see, I don't think we disagree nearly as much as you do. I think our reasons for how we feel the way we do are a little bit different. I agree with you, they shouldn't play Tuesday night. But it's not because Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews and Matthew Judon and go down the list of guys that tested positive. It goes back to Robert Griffin III. It goes back to whatever their offensive line is going to look like. It goes back to what their defensive line is going to look like. But because when we talk about the integrity of the game, competitive balance, competitive equality, look, I'm not saying that those ideas are a farce, but my point is those things don't exist under normal circumstances nearly to the degree that we actually assume them to, because of scheduling differences, because of situations like the Ravens were in 5 years ago where they signed Jimmy Clausen off the street and Ryan Mallett off the street, and they were starting games days later. Those types of things do happen. And with the NFL and the Players Association agreeing to an expanded practice squad, agreeing to different rules in terms of roster flexibility, that was an admission that this was likely to happen at some point. Now, that's where I say you play on, however, not under the circumstances of what we're seeing now, where the Ravens have had positive tests for 8 consecutive days, which has forced the closing, the reopening, and then the closing once again, Monday into Tuesday morning of the facility, and then for it to be shuttered until late Sunday night, and they open it up for conditioning, which, by the way, I have questions about that much more so than worrying about the Denver Broncos quarterback situation, that you still had a positive test that day, and yet you're opening the facility later that day, and you got approval from the NFL. I have much more of a concern about that, Nestor, than who's playing quarterback.
Know. You got a Ricky Ricardo loading you. You got a lot of splaining to do.
Sure.
And they all do. They all do. They all do for what will be a disgrace on Tuesday night in Pittsburgh. Literally, like that they're going to go up there with half a football team. It is on them. There's no doubt about that. But it is a plague. Let's not lose sight of that.
And that's where. And I kind of made this point, again, we were kind of, going at each other, and that's fun. It was all in good fun and, in the spirit of this debate. And I don't think either of us or anyone else has the perfect solution, because there is no perfect solution for this if you're going to try to play. And as I've said all along, for people who said they shouldn't have, I'm not going to disrespect that opinion. That was a very valid opinion. But my issue all along has been kicking the can down the road. And in the meantime, you're leaving these teams in a holding pattern. And as much as we've focused on the 23 players that were on reserve COVID for the Ravens by the end of the weekend, and look, I think, from what I understand, there are some players that were considered close contacts that very well could be activated and play. It's not many, but it's a few guys, and it's a couple guys that, we know Brandon Williams, for example, was a close contact last Monday. So if his ankle and assume is better, if we assume he's tested positive or tested negative for 5 consecutive days without any symptoms, someone like him can play. But I keep coming back to not those 23 players, but everyone else that's left. And this is where, going back to Kendall Hinton for the Broncos, as much as we look at the game as this jump the shark farce and, it's damaging the integrity of the game, although I don't think anyone's tuning out the NFL as a result of what happened. But for me, it's the player safety element to, for example, for him, he was lining up at quarterback and playing quarterback for the first time since being at Wake Forest as a backup back in 2017, I think it was the last time he played quarterback as his, quote, real position. What happens if something happens to him that he suffers a career-ending injury because, quite frankly, he doesn't know what the hell he's doing? If you're Robert Griffin III, now you have a real now RG3 is a real quarterback. He's a solid, real backup NFL quarterback. He started games in this league. He's won games in this league. So, but the difference here is he's going to be behind an offensive line that, let's face it, was already struggling. But again, that's the competitive part of this. That's part of regular football. Guys got hurt, and the Ravens lost Marshall Yonder to retirement, et cetera. We've talked about that. But now you're going to have much more of a patchwork offensive line. You may or may not have, DJ Fluker coming back off, as a close contact to maybe play right tackle. If you don't, I'm not sure who's playing right tackle. Maybe Tyree Phillips. But it's the safety part of this for guys who haven't been able to practice in any kind of meaningful way for a week. It's guys who haven't even been able to get in the weight room in their facility. Sure, do these guys have some weights and stuff they can do at home to stay in shape? Yes. Is it the optimal same way that you would prepare for a normal football game? No. So that's where,
and they can't go to Planet Fitness either.
For me,
they have nowhere else to do this, literally.
Correct. Right? Well, and I'm sure they've been heavily instructed to don't go out in the community.
Don't do anywhere. Don't even order takeout. Literally,
we had this in our building. We don't want to bring community spread into.
How about this? How about if you're positive, you give it to your wife?
Well, and no question. But again, this is why, looking at this from a league perspective, from the Ravens perspective, I continue to look at everyone who hasn't been infected and what impact that's had on them from, sure, the competitive part of it, but also the player safety part of this. If you're RG3, yeah, you can be prepared to play a football game. If anyone told you at some point Lamar Jackson wasn't going to start a game this year, whether it was because of COVID or because he twisted his ankle and was going to miss a couple games with an ankle sprain,
or because he ran into a linebacker, which he does frequently.
Right. You would say, all right, I can't say I'm terribly shocked by that. I hate the effect it has on the Ravens, but yeah. So RG3 very well was going to have to play a game at some point. But the difference here, compared to any other point in time where you're talking about mass injuries for a team, and I can go back to 2016. I can recall the Ravens playing the Giants and the Jets. Go look at who their inactive list was that week. It was almost all either former or future Pro Bowl players that were out. I mean, it was a very meaningful list of players that were missing. The difference with that from that point in time until this week is all the players who are healthy were still able to prepare and stay in shape, and get themselves ready to play in a highly competitive environment. So when you eliminate that, that's when you do get into a situation of what the heck are we doing here? Not so much because the Ravens are down a bunch of players, but the players who are left haven't even had a chance to prepare. And that's what we talked about with the Titans several weeks back, where they're playing that game after not being in their facility for God knows how long it
Sanctioning
was.
NFL games where teams haven't practiced it's not unfair. It's just dumb. It's dumb.
Sure. And that's where I agree with you.
If you can move it, and you're the National Football League, and
Sure.
look, I've had a cup of coffee, right? And I've really Royal Farms, the good stuff. I mean, I got some Kona in here, the stuff that Justin Tucker sings about. So I'm going to sing right now. I've thought more about this, and honestly, dude, on Sunday, I wasn't like chomping at the bit to get after you or to get after the radio or to come on the air and say what I think or run out on Twitter or whatever. I think this thing really hit me more as we started to do radio and I started to talk about it and start to talk about the game on Tuesday, because there's no game to talk about, right? There is no tactical how the Ravens will match up against the undefeated. Like, all that's gone. It's now a preseason game where the outcome's pretty much known. I mean, I gave the Broncos a chance. 4-15, I thought, well, they'll run the old wing T, and they'll move the ball left, and they'll move the ball right, and they'll move the ball north. And then you watch it, and you see the outcome, and you realize that an undefeated, mostly healthy team, James Conner not be damned, and they're having their own problems up there.
And Stephon Tuitt.
Correct.
Another stud on their defensive line.
So all these teams are having a problem. Yeah. So when we're going up there and two of their best players are missing because of the plague and they had to shut it down and they've had to move the game 5 days, this is where the commissioner has to put the big boy pants on and the America pants on and the leadership pants on and say, you know what? The best way for us to make the most amount of money and to get to the finish line for sure is to bring a TO, pretend it's March 13th, right? And we're in week 12. Do what the NBA and the NHL did. There's a handbook on how to do this. We can afford to do this. Hey, fellas, we probably could make even more money off of this somehow by sanctioning games 7 days a week and doing a little World Cup kind of turn on this in good weather where they could count on the weather. They could do it in a dome. They have Arizona. They've spent billions of dollars building these stadia. And they have 4 seasons they have 4 seasons landscaping there too. And they could easily do this by taking a little TO for 3 or 4 weeks and saying, you know what? We're going to reconvene week after Christmas. We're going to stop. We're going to get America healthy. We're going to stop moving around because you should stop moving around. And you shouldn't have gone to grandmom's last week and got all touched up on the mac and cheese and on the collard greens and on the mashed potatoes and the turkey and the gravy and the cranberry and all that. America did that. We saw the airport. I mean, we see it all. And now we're seeing hospitals getting taxed. And now the real story, and this is where my politics and my sports are going to intersect here, where if your sister were a nurse right now, Luke, she wouldn't be getting any PPE, and Willie Snead would be getting 8 swabs a week. And the doctor taking care of my wife who had cancer isn't getting tested because, Lamar's got to get that test. We're just at a whole different level of sort of wartime with this plague than where the league's trying to play through it and not only move games to Tuesday nights when there aren't even games because they dominate television. Well, look, you know what? You could clean this up, be an inspiration to everybody, not play games without quarterbacks and shame the 4 quarterbacks in the Denver Broncos room for whatever they were doing, or shaming the strength and conditioning coach for the Ravens for infesting the team, literally, and clean this thing up and be a leader. So that's my charge. My charge is you could play your Super Bowl in April, and the whole world would be there. But what you can't do is you can't sanction Chiefs games without Patrick Mahomes and his offensive line and call it the National Football League. It's disgraceful. There's my 2 cents.
I think disgraceful is way too strong.
It's disgraceful after Sunday that they're going to go down this slope and do more of it. It should be a one-time Eddie Goodell, stop everything. No. Stop. Competition committee, player safety, doctors, scientists. Where's Dr. Fauci? Hold it. Time out. We can't have the Ravens going to Pittsburgh and not fielding a team. Like, we're just not going to do that. We're not going to, hockey didn't do it. Baseball didn't do it. We shouldn't do it. It's wrong to do it on every level, let alone, to your point, Mike Tomlin's got infestation in his clubhouse. These are two dangerous organizations right now based on the last 10 days. I believe they're paying the scientist, wink, wink, that'll tell them what they want to hear to get, Ben back out on the field. That's because that's who they've always been. And clearly playing that game on Sunday says to me that they really don't care as much about their product as they say they do.
Well, if it was really that, they would have played Thursday night then. I mean, I see. This is where you're going a little too far from where I am for this.
They popped the test on Sunday afternoon, right? So
yeah,
okay,
yeah. But my point is, if it truly was all about money, they would have played that game Thursday night. They would have told the Ravens players who had tested positive to that point they're quarantined, and they would have gone and played. To me, the fact that they are trying to push these games back shows that some awareness of wanting to contain an outbreak. It's just they didn't leave themselves scheduling outs. And now, which kind of blows me away, look, moving from Thursday to Sunday, totally fine with that. And I said to you at the start of our conversation, if the 23 players, and let's keep in mind, 3 of these guys are on IR, some of these guys aren't as consequential, but for the 10 starters, I guess it is, and the 3 or 4 other meaningful players who are either starters or key backups. If those guys had all tested positive Monday and Tuesday, and then Wednesday there were 1 or 2 other stray positives, and by Thursday it had been contained. As far as from the league's perspective, and frankly, I wouldn't have had a ton of problem with this, is if at that point they moved the game to Sunday, the Ravens, as they were what's left of them for the time being, practice, have a walkthrough Thursday, they practice Friday, they have a walkthrough Saturday, depart for Pittsburgh, and play the game. That's the part of it where that was built in. That's why you have an expanded roster. That's why you have all these extra players, because that was an acknowledgement of this was likely to happen. But when you're in this position now where they're in this holding pattern indefinitely, without access to their building, without being able to practice, on the flip side, you have Pittsburgh that was thinking, who's already lost their bye week by no fault of their own, is in this holding pattern themselves, ready to play a game Thursday night, and suddenly it's Sunday, and then you get to Friday afternoon, and it's now Tuesday. You have these teams that aren't adequately able to prepare. And again, that goes back to the player safety part of this, that's why I don't understand, because the league several weeks ago put in the option of having a week 18. I don't know why you get to the point on Friday where it's obvious that we're exercising the week 18 option. This is going to be this NBC Sunday night game for week 18, even if it's the only game played. That way you make NBC whole for losing its Thanksgiving night game. So you have that in place. And now, because that's already been exercised, you're now in a position to be a little more aggressive in postponing some games over the next 4 to 5 weeks. To get back to your point as far as a shutdown, I just don't know how feasible it is to shut down the league and assume you're going to be able to resume in a couple weeks. I mean, let's face it, when the NBA
I think
and the
America
NHL
is really struggling right. I mean, I think one of the things that they could point to is hospitalizations in beds in places like Green Bay,
right,
and take a step back right here, right now, and see where the curve is going.
Yeah.
It would be an easy off ramp for them to go make more money and do it the right way and finish the season the right way, because it really was a pretty good season. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I talked about the Eddie Feigner thing. And again, I mean, this is where the shark is. And I wasn't talking like this last week. Right. I was talking like this back in July and August. So I don't think I've meandered from where I was. I thought that that they would have had a bubble. I thought they would have had a nuclear option figured out by now, right? Like I thought they would have had an A, a B, a C, and a D. I didn't think plan B was go play without the quarterbacks. Like I thought that somebody would step in for the good of the game and or step in before this Lamar less whatever this is going to be on Tuesday night and say, you know what, country's trending the wrong way. Got a lot of issues here internally in our own league. It's probably going to get worse because the scientists, I'm sure, are telling them 3 weeks from now you're going to have 3 more teams. And you know, every scientist has said this. It's just like the movie, Luke. They don't believe the scientists, right? I mean, they just don't. And
but some scientists have dissenting opinions. You know,
hey, man, if this thing picks up and the Ravens go play the Cowboys next week and everything's cool and no other teams pop, like your Marlins Cardinals theory or
sure,
you know, wherever it is, I've just always been so dubious because I really do read up on the science. and every single thing the scientists have said since January, since we heard about this on the evening news, every single thing has happened, including getting a vaccine coming sooner than we thought, by the way, too. But neither here nor there. The National Football League has just trudged forward to the point where they played a game without a quarterback. Now they're going to play a game without a team. Really, I mean, bad enough how it looked without a quarterback with the Broncos. I really am concerned with how this will look on Tuesday and how Steve's going to feel about it, how Rooney's going to – how all of them should feel about this. Because at the end, this really is about 32 guys and a billionaire, right? Like, well, no, 32 billionaires and a guy. Make sure I get that right. This really is their decision. I mean, it's always – this isn't Park Avenue. It's not a bunch of executives or lawyers or whatever. This is them saying what will we feel good about? What, you know, we're all going to wake up rich tomorrow no matter what. What can we sanction and feel good about and make legal sense of, make some ethical sense of, make some competitive sense of, send some PR out on it, you know, put our hearts over our chest, you know, play the anthem and, you know, forge on. You know, like, that's cool, but then the game's going to start on Tuesday night, and I have a feeling it's really not going to – and I think it's one thing to have the Jets stink or to have the Browns be 0-16 or have the Lions be 0-16, but they're going out there doing it with, you know, with an honest effort and honest practice and guys getting paid and a full effort. I don't think that's what they're sanctioning right now. And if this is the beginning, and this is my point, if you're going to sanction 2 more of these next week, and 2 more of these the following week, and then it's going to be the Chiefs or, you know, or whatever. You know, I just, this isn't, the science will tell them that they're being foolish, but I've seen the way they vote. I don't know that they're going to listen to the science. I mean, I really don't.
Yeah.
Any more than the quarterbacks listened to it last week or any more than the strength and conditioning coach did.
Yeah. I mean, I think in some ways you're making it way more complicated than it actually is in that regard. I mean, these players aren't, you know, if they're not playing, they're not in a bubble either, that they're not going to get the virus anyway elsewhere. Yeah. But, you know, so as far as how it relates to the rest of the community, I don't know that. I'm not smart enough to know that. All I do know is when there's been, from what I understand, no evidence of any on-field transmission. This has been the same exact – look what happened with the quarterbacks in Denver. This was a close contact situation because they were sitting together in a room without masks, and Driscoll test positive, and the other 3 guys are close contacts for 5 days. So, but let me get back to, you know, the point that you're making. And look, if this goes on in the same way and we have 5 more examples of this over the next 2 weeks, then I'll probably be with you at that point. My point is we've gotten to week 12. Up until this point, even with the Titans, and look at how they handled that. Yes, it was unfortunate that the Steelers lost their bye week, but I also go back to the same point that I've made as far as acknowledging that this was going to be different, and there were going to be players that would miss games, and even multiple players for the same team missing a game, even the same position group. We acknowledged that was going to be possible, or we never would have even thought to make a bigger practice squad. On the flip side, and this does kind of tie into talking about what happened with the Broncos and Saints on Sunday, talking about what's happened with the Steelers now, who've kind of been on the wrong end of the Titans situation, and now the Ravens. Although, as you pointed out, they've had some positive tests that have at least caused them to take pause even if it doesn't look like a full-blown outbreak. But there had to be an acknowledgement that, yeah, there were going to be some situations where you were going to get, quote, screwed because the other team is dealing with this, and you've been clean. But don't complain about it too much, because guess what? That could be you a month from now.
Oh, yeah, man. Dudes were tweeting on Tuesday some hate towards some shame on the Ravens. And, look, 3 days later, it's their players.
And look, from a football standpoint, I understand frustration. But there's a case where everyone needs to take a deep breath and just, again, acknowledge the big picture here of what the league is trying to do, and frankly, what the league has done to this point in time. Again, we've had a very credible season until this point.
But it doesn't take much to lose credibility, right? It takes a lifetime to build trust and credibility, and it takes the Denver Broncos fans being served that on Sunday by the league and saying, you know what, man, that's not cool. I mean, come on, that's not cool in the middle of the play.
Understood,
cool.
but I also think consumers are also not naive enough to recognize that there's a possibility of this kind of thing happening, quite frankly. I mean, we've talked about it. We talked about it. We talked about it many times.
And then the league needs to react and say, we can't serve that pancake. It's not. So it's not worthy of our restaurant. That steak's not cooked right. It smells a little funny. Bring it back, because we're the National Football League. You know what I mean? That stands for something. So it stands for something for me. I would think that it would stand for something for Steve Bisciotti, that I'm embarrassed for him on Tuesday night to own the team. He should be embarrassed that this is being sanctioned, and I'll let him know when I see him, whenever that is.
Yeah, and look, I'm not going to sit here and try to say that it's normal, but nothing's normal in 2020, and this goes back to what I've said all along, that if we're expecting things to feel and look normal, then we probably shouldn't do it then. I mean, like,
okay,
really.
Well, I mean, and
that's what
I think once you get up to the point where you can choose to do it or choose not to do it, it's like going to see your grandparents on Thanksgiving. You either chose to do it or chose not to do it. It is a choice. They didn't have to play these games. Right. They don't have to play this game on Tuesday. They had another plan. Allegedly, they're billionaires. They sit around and do this all day. Like, they should have a bubble plan. I would think somewhere in somebody's Google Docs, there's somebody that's put a hell of a lot of effort into, if the plague comes back on Halloween, if it comes back on Thanksgiving, if it comes back on Christmas, if it comes back January 15th, what will the National Football League do? What is our backup plan? Yeah. What is our Alamo Dome plan? What is our Vegas Dome plan, our Arizona Dome plan, our LA? We have these stadia. They are there. We would be far better contained and far more likely to deliver for our sponsors, to deliver player safety, to have credible games, to have better TV ratings, to create a better tournament. Like that, I would be sitting on the end of Jerry Jones saying, fellers, listen, we can wrap this thing up, and ain't nobody playing, and we can put everybody in a bubble. I've seen that World Cup. Lamar, tell them about the World Cup. Well, tell them how they play every day, and they play three games a day. We could do something like that, couldn't we? Come on, Roger, let's think out of the box here. That to me could be sold to the players.
Yeah, I mean,
4 weeks in Vegas, 4 weeks in LA.
It's more than that, though. I mean,
but if you win, you get to stay. Then it becomes a Stanley Cup Finals.
I still think you're really shortchanging.
Was LeBron bitching down in Orlando?
Yeah, lots of those guys. They almost left the bubble. I mean, there were guys who didn't even want to do it. There were lots of examples of guys that
well, then opt out. I don't want to do a game with 20 football players in Pittsburgh on Tuesday.
It's not going to be. They're going to have a full game day roster. But to get back to your point,
ladies and gentlemen, Luke Jones with the starting lineup of the Baltimore Ravens. You want to go through it? Can you pronounce all their names?
Yeah.
You can? Okay.
Yeah. No, but look, the bubble option, I totally agree with for the postseason. But I mean, I think you're in dream world if you think you can just bubble the entire NFL. And also,
somebody said that about the NHL and the NBA too, by the way. Like, somebody probably said that when we're going to move our baseball teams out of town for the playoffs. Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
No,
because we're trying to,
but
because we're putting the
there's 5
television
weeks
show
left in the
on, and the Broadway is moved to Vegas. We've moved the show to Vegas for the winter because of the plague.
but there's 5 weeks left in the regular season. We're still 2 months away from the Super Bowl. Now, to go back to what you're saying in general, I don't have a problem with that. I don't think because of the Denver Broncos played a game without quarterbacks, and the Ravens, who experienced an outbreak, which we acknowledged all along could happen over the course of the season and has already happened. I don't know if those two things right there signal automatically just shut the league down. I'm not sure how long. I don't know how feasible it is to put together the kind of bubble scenario that you're talking about in the matter of a week or two. I think it's much more. To your point, talking about baseball, I think it's much more feasible to do this once you get to, say, the divisional round, where you're talking about 8 teams then rather than 32. And look, I mean, there's been talk about teams going into, I mean, the Saints did this during training camp, where they essentially had a mini bubble at their team hotel during training camp. So, there are certainly options of that nature that they can explore.
All I hear is John Gruden saying, "You love football. How important is football to you?"
Well,
that's all
it's
I can
important,
hear.
but these guys also have families, and there were the NBA talked about this, and that was when guys were already saved for what they played a few play-in games and some seeding games, but they were already at the postseason at that point, and teams that were out of it didn't even go to the bubble. So we're still talking about a different timetable here, but I guess my point is I'm not at the point yet where I feel this needs to be paused. Now, to your point, if this happens, we have 3 more situations similar to this next weekend and 5 more after that, then yeah, I mean, no question about it.
I've always thought they'd be better served the bubble, by the way. I've always sort of envisioned.
That's better for everyone but the players. I'm just saying.
Fair enough. It might actually be better for the players. Ask Lamar how it's going this week for him. It's not, because he's not playing, and he's and the side of this, and I will take a break here. But
there's a human element, though.
The human element is Calais Campbell and Mark Andrews have pre-existing conditions that every scientist and doctor in the world would tell you that they're probably struggling right now. They're probably not feeling real well, and probably
Mark Andrews.
Well.
But Mark Andrews has also met with, as his father is a doctor, for example, and has said that he has been told, with keeping his blood sugar at a good level, which he does, being healthy, he's been told that he does not have a greater risk for this than anyone else. Now, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to sit here and say he's right or wrong. I'm just saying, it's something that these guys have considered. But I think it's very easy for anyone else who's not part of that environment to just say, well, let's put the players in a bubble, and they can't be around their families whatsoever. And, I think that's a much greater ask than people make it out to be. And people can keep talking about the NHL and the NBA. That was a shorter period of time, and you're playing for a championship right at that point in time. And,
I think every NFL player has watched that now and would be much more comfortable with it, knowing that going to be safe, going to play ball. I play ball. This is what I do. We're going on a road trip, and like, I think I hear you that you'd have, there'd be all sorts of things in the holiday. I hear all of that, but I think that it's something they should have been selling all along as a possibility, so that this doesn't happen, and that this would be the nuclear option that if they want to finish the season. Luke, I want to debate some more. We're going to have one more debate about this. I do want to talk more about the Ravens and what's going on the field, because I think so many people are going to put the telly on Tuesday and want to watch this and want to sort of process the RG3 experience. I haven't even put together in my mind who's going to have the ball and how and when, because, Steve went down on Sunday. Baltimore Luke is the way to follow him. Ness at BaltimorePositive.com for me. We're doing this incredible thing with Taharka through the holidays. Discounted ice cream, $15.70 off an 8-pack. I've got the 8-pack over my shoulder. They deliver it to your door. It's the best ice cream in the world. We don't ask much around here, but we're trying to put a little case study together for the new Baltimore Positive. If you are a listener, if you love Luke, you love what we do, and you love the Don Muller segments and all of our sponsors and Rofo and all these great folks. Order some ice cream and enjoy it during the holidays. You'll be glad you did. My wife's going to be doing the ads. All right, more from Luke, more from me, more football, more COVID, less COVID, hopefully. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore. We never stop talking Baltimore positive and plague time football.